Hi everyone, welcome to Lecture 11, Part 1. We're really going to focus here on systems of support. So now you guys should have a good understanding of what an intellectual disability is, what it is not, have a good understanding of autism spectrum disorder now. But now we're really going to get into the part where we talk about, and I've mentioned multiple times, that our current definition is the idea of supports and supports planning is so important. What you're going to want to do throughout these next couple of lectures, either at the same time or ahead of time, is have a really good understanding of the document that's the Wyoming DD Developmental Disability Support Waiver. I want you guys to look through that and make sure you have a really good understanding of what those things are, what are some situations or deficits in adaptive or cognitive behaviors that might necessitate those supports. What are the strengths of the DD waiver, which is meant to provide a very comprehensive system of supports for individuals? And the DD waiver really is, it's kind of a guidebook for what can be available for individuals that have developmental disabilities and qualify for DD waiver services. It's also important to kind of look at the billing units, how things are billed. Individuals are either on one of two types of waiver, one of which is a comprehensive waiver, and the other one is kind of a little more piecemeal, so you can kind of get certain things as you want. Monies are allocated a little bit differently, and the DD waiver spells that out. So make sure you have a good understanding of that, because it'll be important for the quiz in this module and also for the instructor prompt that for this module, which is the second discussion question for this module, which will be discussion 5. So make sure you take a real good look at that and have an idea of what are, again, the strengths and the weaknesses of that DD waiver. So let's start looking at supports versus support needs. So I want you guys to think, what are supports? Based on the readings, based on looking at the DD waiver and just everything that you've learned so far, what are supports? So supports are resources and strategies that promote the development, education, interests, and personal well-being of a person. And again, that goal, the main goal, is to enhance individual functioning. Think again back to that constitutive definition, that multidimensional framework. And then think, well, what are support needs? Support needs can be a little bit trickier to define and kind of wrap your head around because it's a psychological construct, and it refers to the pattern and intensity of supports needed for a person to participate in activities. And this is linked to that normative human functioning. What is that bridge that's, what are the support needs an individual has as a product of their disability across and how they relate to those 5 areas of human functioning, and what are the supports that are needed to mediate that support need? So based on the reading and your knowledge so far, why is this important? So why is it important to understand what supports are and what are support needs? And the supports orientation has brought together this person-centered planning approach, personal growth and development opportunities, community inclusion, self-determination, and empowerment. Supports really give credence to all of that and make us aware that an individual may have a disability, and specifically in our cases, the intellectual disability. And supports, again, really bring together how can we bring that person in using a person-centered planning approach, understanding their need for growth and opportunities across the lifespan, the opportunities to be included in their community, and and really ensuring that we're keeping self-determination and empowerment at the crux of that. So allowing them control over their life, and supports and understanding their support needs really help put the individual back into focus when we're support planning. So key points in understanding supports. So supports provision needs to be based on the assessed support need of the individual, not on what is just available. We don't give people what we might have or might be available. And we'll talk a little bit more in part 2 of this lecture about this whole idea of equity versus equality and why it's important that we can't just give everyone the same. As a product of having a disability, we know they need certain supports, and it needs to be individualized. So when you're looking through the DD waiver, think about, is this comprehensive enough that folks would be able to get what they need? Are there certain restrictions that maybe might not allow someone to get what they need, and maybe just not what's available? Supports mediate the mismatch, again, between an individual's competencies and the environmental demands. And that's bringing it back again to that multidimensional framework or constitutive definition. And this mismatch results in support needs. So that this mismatch here really helps us understand the construct of support needs. And this is why we necessitate particular types and intensity of supports. We know that thoughtful planning and application will increase the likelihood that supports will lead to increased functioning and access to things in their community and different parts of their life that they might not otherwise have access to. The focus should be placed on reducing that mismatch between the environment and the limitations. That's the whole goal of support planning. And our needs need to be based on preferences and priorities of the individual. And that brings it back to that whole idea of empowerment and self-determination. It's not just on what we think is what is best for that individual, but based on what they want to do, their goals, what they want out of their life, what leisure activities they want to participate in, making sure our supports match that. And that simply is done, and we'll talk a little bit in part 2 about the SIS, the Supports Need Intensity Scale, and how that's used through a person-centered planning approach to best meet the needs of the individual. So again, support needs. This it's a psychological construct. We can't necessarily see through our eyes a need. It's observed through difficulties a person may have. Support needs are based on the premise that human functioning is influenced by the extent of congruence between an individual's capacity and the environment in which they're expected to function. And so support needs can differ from school, community activities, at home. The support needs depends on what the environment a person is in. Support needs are enduring. So the level and intensity of the support needs will change, but the fact that the person has support needs, that will continue throughout the lifespan. So the supports may change and evolve over time, but support needs do not. Again, the level and intensity of the support needs, excuse me, may, but not that actual support need itself. We know that support needs are enduring for individuals that have an intellectual disability. So I want you guys to think, how do you define need? So a need is kind of what is necessary. And I want to, again, look at the DD waiver and think of this. What is the support need that might be there that would necessitate this support as you go through each of those? And when we're looking at needs, we first have normative or objective needs. And this is what a professional expert in the field or a social scientist might define. This person needs this. So objectively, they might need food. We know we need food to live. This is just an objective need. The professional standard is compared to the situation the person is involved in. So we know there's a gap here. They absolutely need this to have access. So a normative or objective need, again, would also be in order to navigate maybe a sidewalk. Someone with a wheelchair may need an objective or normative need would be they need to access that, so we need a curbed sidewalk. A felt need, this occurs when then the person says, hey, I need this. This is something that I'm struggling with, and so this is when the person wants or perceives something, and then they ask for it. And it's really important to ask the person what they need. An expressed need or demand, this is then a felt need has turned into action. So the person has said, hey, I need services. I would like to be on the DD waiver. I need these things. And comparative needs, these are obtained by studying the characteristics of a population and that are receiving a certain particular service. So we know individuals with intellectual disabilities in this one community receive this. We want to make sure they're getting comparative services. And we want to see that, again, are people with the same characteristics, individuals with Down syndrome receiving one type of services and making sure that we comparatively give them to that same population. So needs versus wants. So I'm sure you guys have all had situations either as a parent or with your parents where you say, I need this. And they'll say, well, it sounds like you want that. You don't need that. And so it's really important that it's not necessarily that we're only giving people just what they need. It's also important to take their wants into consideration when we're meeting their needs. We can't give always everyone everything they want, but if what they want isn't available and actually is an objective need or is a comparative need, something else, it's really important to take that into account. So I always like to give this example of, you guys have met one of my cats. This is one of my other ones, and he certainly has a lot of things that he expresses as needs, but they're definitely wants, which is specifically certain types of food all of the time on demand. And while his needs are met because he's free fed, and so he has food all the time, he wants a certain type of wet food or pate that we make available at certain times to him. However, there's been periods of time when we've wanted to put more weight on him, and so the goal has been making sure his needs are met, which are nutrition. So we might take his wants, which he's more likely to eat this other type of food, and so we use that. So he tells me all the time that he has needs, and most of the time they're probably wants. But if I take his wants into consideration, I can better use a person-centered approach with him, and get him to eat so he keeps weight on, and stays healthy. With all those types of things. So just important to take wants into consideration because they really help inform you what supports are going to work effectively, and they also can clue you into some needs that may not be being met. So that is part one. In part two, we're going to talk about how we measure support needs. We're going to look at different types of supports for adult employment. We're going to look at a 5-component process for planning and delivering those supports, individualized planning, and then also, why can't we give everyone the same? And this is really going to be the focus for your prompt for your discussion post this week. And we're going to talk a little bit about equality versus equity in support planning. So thank you guys for your time and attention, and I look forward to seeing you, or I won't see you, but for you guys and your attention for part 2 of this lecture. Thanks so much.